We would like to recognize our distinguished Minority Floor Leader to give his contra Sona. Our distinguished Minority Floor Leader, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel
Thank you.
III is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I come before you today to deliver what many refer to as the contra Sona. However, I am not here today to counter all of what the President has said in his State of the Nation address last July 24, 2023. I want to deliver the realistic Sona, the more realistic report on the state of the Filipino nation with the people, the ordinary Filipino, as the focus. Let me start by congratulating the President for seriously discharging his constitutional duty to deliver the State of the Nation address. He obviously gave it his best. The state of the nation is worrisome. Nakakabagabag, nakakabahala. Mahirap ang buhay ng Pilipino ngayon. Mahal ang presyo ng pagkain at iba pang bilihin. At patuloy pa rin ang pagtaas ng presyo ng mga ito. Isama na rin natin dyan ang gastos sa tubig, kuryente, renta, transportasyon at iba pang importante at hindi maiwasang mga gastusin. Hindi tama sabihin na sa mga nakalipas na buwan, nakita natin ang pagbaba ng presyo ng bilihin sa iba't ibang mga sektor. Ito ang nakita namin ng aking staff noong ikumpara namin ang presyo ng mga pangunahing bilihin ngayon sa presyo nito noong Hulyo-Enero 2022. Ang bigas, pangkalahatan hindi bumaba, ang ibang varieties tumaas pa nga eh. Isda, hindi bumaba, ang ibang klaseng isda tumaas pa. Karning baka, baboy, manok, pangkalahatan hindi bumaba, tumaas pa. Gulay, pangkalahatan, hindi bumaba. Ang ibang varieties, tumaas pa rin. Prutas, marami ang tumaas. Mga pampalasa or pangsahog, karamihan tumaas. Lalo na ang sibuyas, sobrang taas. Pero ang local garlic, sa research namin, ay bumaba naman ang presyo. Asukal, tumaas. Cooking oil, halos pareho lamang. Kuryente, tumaas. Tubig, tumaas. Pamasahe, tumaas. Meron tayong cost of living crisis ngayon. And let us add to this the cost of dying. Dapat tignan din ito ng ating gobyerno. Tapos, baon pa tayo sa utang. With national debt at 14.1 trillion pesos and a population, let's put it at 117 million, each Filipino has a debt of around 120,000 pesos. This national debt figure does not even include the GOCC and LGU debts. Some of our learned big thinkers say that we don't need to worry about our debt because our economy can outgrow our debt. However, it is senseless to talk about outgrowing our debt if we cannot even show that our so-called growing economy has enabled us to bring down the principal of our debt. The fact that our national debt has doubled in just 6 years clearly indicates that we have not succeeded in decreasing the principal sum of our debt. We have also heard it said that we need not worry about our debt because this is not due all at once. Well, then this only means that the Filipino people will be paying for this debt all throughout their lives in the form of higher taxes, fees, and other charges. Mamamatay na lang tayo, nagbabayad pa rin tayo ng utang, tapos meron pa tayong ipapamana sa sunod na henerasyon para sila naman ang sumunod sa parehong ikot ng buhay. Mr. President, ang lumulobong utang ng bansa ay nararapat lamang mapag-usapan na. Nakakalungkot na hindi ito nabanggit ng Pangulo sa kanyang Sona. Corruption has definitely contributed to the ballooning of our debt. A few years ago, a deputy ombudsman, using United Nations Development Program's estimates, said that corruption loss in the Philippines equated to 20% of its annual government appropriation. In the 2022 Corruption Perception Index of Transparency International, which rates countries based on the perceived level of public sector corruption, the Philippines ranked 116th out of 180 countries, scoring only 33 out of 100, which is way below the global average of 43. The lower the score, the more corrupt in perception. Ang ibig sabihin itong study na ito ay corrupt ang tingin ng mundo sa ating bansa. Baka hindi alam ng Pangulo na dumarami na ang reklamo laban sa korupsyon. At marami na rin ang nagsasabi na puno na ng sindikato ang gobyerno, kada ahensya meron. The President Sona did not tackle the issue of corruption. We need this government to show that it is committed to the fight against corruption. We need to hear the orders being issued. We need to know who are assigned to do the crackdown. We hope President Bongbong Marcos will soon announce his administration's game plan in fighting the worsening corruption. The President in the Sona said, "We cannot tolerate corruption or incompetence in government. This government's preoccupation with logos, or what I call low governance, is a manifestation of wasteful spending and incompetence, if not corruption. Spending millions of pesos for slogans and logos is indicative of misplaced priorities. Let us go beyond sloganeering and logo governance and spend our money wisely on actual programs which directly benefit our people. If our government leaders feel the itch to spend money but don't know where to spend it on, don't spend on new slogans and logos. Instead, I suggest that they contribute the amount to addressing our more pressing concerns like increasing our food production, addressing our education crisis, improving our health services, lowering our energy cost, taming inflation, eliminating injustice, providing jobs, fighting crime and corruption, supporting our creative industries, multiplying connectivity, among many others. These are expenses which invest in the productivity of our people. We cannot afford to be wasteful, to waste funds, or to waste time. Let us put a stop to this practice of giving confidential and intelligence funds to those government agencies which are not even engaged in national security work and public order or law enforcement. Let us remember that this administration has allocated a whopping 10 billion pesos in Filipino taxpayers' money to the confidential and intelligence funds of various government offices in the 2023 national budget. I hope the President and his cabinet can intervene to stop these manifestations of incompetence, if not corruption, like the following, among others. Ang kaliwat kanan ng mga issue sa ating immigration at mga airlines, unlawful offloading, unnecessary and arbitrary interrogations, flight delays and cancellations, difficulty in obtaining refunds, among others. I am also making an issue out of the imposition of the travel tax on our people's right to travel. Remember that Article 3, Section 6 of the 1987 Constitution guarantees the liberty of travel, which shall not be impaired except in the interest of national security, public safety, or public health, as may be provided by law. We cannot and should not tax the exercise of a right. In December 2022, a Filipina missed her flight to Israel as the immigration officer asked her lengthy, irrelevant questions and demanded to see her yearbook, graduation photos, emails, and private messages. In April 2023, a Filipina and her partner were barred from leaving for Hong Kong as she's still employed in the United Arab Emirates. Bawal na bang magbakasyon ang isang OFW sa ibang bansa? Recently, a traveler was not allowed to board her flight to Taiwan for failing to present 10 birth certificates to show her relationship with her sponsor. Mr. President, ito po ay nakakalungkot at nakakabahala. It's a total nightmare to experience what these offloaded passengers have gone through. Waste of money, time, and all that is invested in planning their trips abroad. While we recognize the duty of the Bureau of Immigration to combat human trafficking, this duty should not compromise the constitutionally protected right of Filipinos to travel. Ang mga kapalpakan sa Land Transportation Office or LTO. Various controversies have plagued and continue to plague the LTO. Hindi maasahang online portal and computerized systems, matagal na paghihintay at backlog sa lisensya at plaka bukod pa sa iba. As of June 2023, the backlog in the license plates has surged to approximately 690,000. There is an allegation that since 2017 up to the present, only one supplier has won LTO's yearly contracts for the supply of vehicle license plates and other related goods, and that the license plates order management system is privately owned and by a foreign corporation. Only the supplier who has access to the OMS can generate the QR codes required by the system. Talk about system capture. In order to address the shortage in driver's license cards, the LTO has resorted to considering the paper-based official receipt as a temporary driver's license. Issues plaguing the LTO's IT infrastructure are yet to be addressed and solved. The experience of the LTO is one of the best examples of the loopholes, the money-making opportunities in digitalization. We also have the case of collapsing bridges. In 2020, we encountered a number of bridges collapsing. San Juan Bantilan Bridge connecting Batangas and Quezon, Borja Bridge in Bohol, Carlos P. Romulo Bridge in Pangasinan, and many others. The collapse of the Clarin Bridge in Bohol injured 23 and took the lives of 4 people. And then just recently, the Malamba Bridge being built in Davao City collapsed, resulting in 5 deaths and 2 injuries. The PNP's involvement in illegal drugs and failure to solve, hence deter killings. In October 2022 in Manila, authorities confiscated 990 kilograms of shabu with an estimated value of 6.7 billion pesos. 50 police personnel, including high-ranking officials, were found to be involved in the anomalies and massive cover-up in the operation. On November 26, 2022, 5 persons, including a minor, were killed in a shooting and hacking attack in Barangay Songko, Lantapan, Bukidnon. Unsolved. On June 14, 2023, the Fausto family was massacred in Himamaylan City, Negros Occidental. Unsolved. On July 1, 2023, 2 village officials were shot dead in Barangay Baganihan in Marilog District, Davao City. Unsolved. Sobrang dami pa ng mga kasong patayan at karahasan na hindi pa nalulutas. Maubusan tayo ng oras kung babanggitin natin lahat ng mga ito. Justice remains elusive. Just recently, the DOJ junked a murder case filed against policemen. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, passed to the grieving family members the burden of proving that the bullets which killed the victim came from the police. How are ordinary Filipinos supposed to have the resources to prove ballistics? I therefore call the attention of the PNP Internal Affairs. Act on matters like this. It is unfortunate as well that the case of the missing sabongeros is yet to be resolved. Nasaan na sila? Nag-aantay pa rin ang kanilang pamilya. Hindi alam kung buhay pa or something worse has happened to them. The families are calling out again for justice. And they are dismayed that the monthly case conference of the DOJ on the matter has been stopped. We must bring justice to the families of all of the disappeared. Sabi ng Pangulo, nagsisimula ang lahat sa edukasyon. Sang-ayon po ako dyan. Education is the great equalizer. Therefore, education should truly enjoy the highest budgetary priority. To prepare our nation for the future, we must focus on education. Kaya ayusin natin ang software at hardware ng edukasyon. The software would be the curriculum, the content, and how these are taught. The hardware would be the classrooms, facilities, and materials. And since we are using an analogy involving the computer, I propose the incorporation of computer coding or programming in the curriculum. Let us prepare for the future high-tech world and let us prepare our people early. In the aspect of health, let us not forget our senior citizens and those with mental health conditions and the families taking care of them. The average life expectancy of Filipinos is around 72 years. Meanwhile, the number of senior citizens in the Philippines continues to increase. Based on the latest available data from the PSA, senior citizens constitute 8.5% of the population, or around 9.22 million. The Population Commission projects that in 12 years' time, 14% of the population will be senior citizens. We value our elders for their invaluable wisdom and the contributions they have made to our nation. It is therefore ironic that many of our parents and grandparents are left behind in terms of healthcare. Although we are approaching healthcare through the mechanism of regional specialty hospitals, let us be aware that we do not have an apex hospital for the age-related and age-induced health concerns of the aged and the aging. We need to establish a national geriatric hospital. This is the National Hospital for Senior Citizens, where our doctors can develop specialty knowledge and skills in geriatric medicine, which is the healthcare and treatment of elderly persons. Also, let active aging be our formula when it comes to our policies for senior citizens. Let us still tap them, involve them, and seek their wise advice. Families taking care of persons with mental health conditions must be given assistance and support in addition to the exemption from VAT of certain medicines. And let us extend this assistance to the schools, orphanages, and other entities like charitable organizations which are focusing on this neglected and close to invisible segment of our society. Ito, aktual na reklamo ng isang nanay na dalawa ang anak na autistic boys. Nalaman niya na ang PWD na dependent ng isang SSS member ay may benefits din pala. And I will now quote her. Ang medyo hindi maayos, sir, ay yung requirement na recent medical certificate kasi hindi kami masagot ng maayos kanina. Sabi po, dapat doktor sa brain dahil sakit daw ang autism. So sinabi naming na hindi sickness kundi disorder. And the boys are eligible dahil lifetime ang condition nila. We told them ang autism ay hindi naman gagaling at papaano ang families na hindi makaka-provide ng recent na medical certificate from a development pediatrician dahil sa napakamahal at hindi agad-agad na appointment. As usual po, ang sagot sa amin yun daw ang requirement nila. Nakakalungkot, di po ba? Kasi families like us really need these benefits. So it means Habang hindi nakaka-comply sa requirements, hindi makaka-file ang family ng benefits kahit kailangan na. This is also proof na hindi talaga nauunawaan ng karamihan ang kondisyon ng mga batang tulad nila. End of quote. Those two boys have already been diagnosed to be within the autism disorder spectrum. But the SSS requires a recent medical certificate. Let us not have programs for the needy only on paper. Let us understand the spirit and purpose behind these programs and implement them in good faith without putting unnecessary obstacles along the way which actually defeat the very objective of the program. Let us also not forget our persons with disabilities. Let us extend to them whatever help we can afford. For the blind, for example, there is a school for the blind based in Metro Manila, which has a budget of only 22.7 million pesos. Kulang ang budget, kulang din ang bilang ng paaralan para sa mga bulag. Paano na yung nasa Mindanao at Visayas? Tulungan po natin sila. Our healthcare workers, the unsung heroes, do not receive enough allowances and benefits. According to the Professional Regulatory Commission, the Philippines has a supply of doctors, nurses, and other health workers, but only a fraction are in actual practice of their profession. We do not have, for example, we do not have sufficient civil service posts for nurses and psychologists. Our healthcare workers deserve a career path even in government service. Bigyan naman natin ng angkop na dignidad ang ating mga bayani. The President started his Sona with the mention of macroeconomic data like GDP growth rate. That reported 7.6 GDP growth rate in 2022 means nothing to the ordinary Filipino. The cost of living is very high. The income of the typical Filipino family is not enough for their basic needs and for their decent existence as a family of human beings. Those who are employed are not paid living wages. Many are unemployed and many more are underemployed. Bantayan natin ang presyo ng pagkain. Huwag natin hayaan itong tumaas ng tumaas. Kung pwede nga, pababain pa natin ito. Lalo na kung hindi naman napapataas ang sahod ng mga manggagawa natin. There was no mention in the Sona about the need to increase our people's wages, especially the minimum wage, given the ever-increasing cost of living here in the Philippines. Since our regional wage boards have been slow to react to realities on the ground, we need to legislate a new national minimum wage, which will ensure that all workers receive a just living wage. I have grave doubts on the reported 95.7% employment rate. That leaves us with only 4.3% unemployment rate. At that rate of unemployment, the Philippines can be considered a fully employed economy. That means that all willing and able individuals who are seeking employment are able to find suitable work. Is that what we see on the ground? Is that consistent with our experience? Sa dami ng lumalapit sa atin na naghahanap at humihingi ng trabaho, imposibleng nasa full employment status na po tayo. Sa aking opinyon, merong mali sa pagkolekta natin ng datos. The figures on employment matters are misleading and do not reflect the true state of the nation. The President mentions that the Kadiwa store concept has shown that we can bring down the prices of rice, meat, fish, vegetables, and sugar. However, what we should understand is that the Kadiwa stores are in effect pop-up discount stores which are location-bound, time-bound, and with limited supply of goods. In short, these are set up quickly for short-term operation in a temporary location. Band-aid solution. Ang kailangan natin ay pangkalahatang pagbaba ng presyo ng mga bilihin, lalo na ng pagkain sa buong bansang Pilipinas. Walang pinipili, lahat makikinabang. And to achieve this with food items, I agree we have to boost agricultural production. And our farmers must be able to sell in volume. To generate and produce both jobs and food, and at the same time fight inflation, let us concentrate on agriculture. Produce more food, increase the yield of our land. Productivity is the answer. On the matter of inflation, recent data from Pulse Asia indicated that 3 out of 5 Filipinos believe that the government should address the rising prices of goods and services. According to the International Monetary Fund, the Philippines ranked 3rd among Southeast Asian countries with the highest inflation rate in 2022. What is inflation? Inflation is the sustained increase in the prices of goods and services in an economy over time. It means that, on average, more money is needed to purchase the same quantity of goods and services than before. The President stated that inflation rate is moving in the right direction. From 8.7% in January, our inflation has continued to ease up in all regions, settling now at 5.4% for June. What is that to the ordinary Filipino? While it is encouraging to note that inflation has eased to 5.4% as of June 2023, we must acknowledge that the prolonged period of high inflation rates has already affected the purchasing power and overall welfare of many Filipinos. The average inflation rate of 7.2% recorded between January and June 2023 exceeds the projected range of 5 to 6% for the year. When the Regional Wage Board in the National Capital Region increased the minimum wage by 7%, because that is the percentage of 40 pesos to 570 pesos. Were they just intending for our minimum wage workers to merely survive by keeping up with inflation? What has therefore happened to the state policy found in Article 2, Section 9 of the 1987 Constitution that the state shall promote a just and dynamic social order that will ensure the prosperity and independence of the nation and free the people from poverty through policies that promote a rising standard of living and an improved quality of life for all. We should get no consolation from the projection that inflation will be at 2.9% by 2024, especially if this came from people who did not foresee that inflation would reach an alarming peak of 8.7% at the beginning of this year. The oversight of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas must be strengthened, like making them appear before Congress at least twice a year to justify their programs and decisions, like the decision to remove Philippine abaca from Philippine banknotes. An additional observation, our peso has lost a lot of value very quickly. Aren't the people entitled to an explanation from the government on why the price of onion reached an all-time high of 800 pesos per kilo in December 2022, making onion more expensive than meat? Also, why sugar prices have spiked to as high as 136 pesos per kilo? While we are on the topic of sugar, we should also ask the government to explain the following. 1. Why has the price of sugar remained high despite the flooding of imported sugar into the market? 2. Why has the Sugar Regulatory Administration been rocked by 2 scandals already in less than a year? 3. Why has there been a sugar shipment in the port of Batangas on February 9, 2023, ahead of the issuance of Sugar Order Number 6, which was only approved on February 15, 2023? 4. Why did the Department of Agriculture, claiming it acted on direct orders from Malacanang, choose only 3 favored traders to import the sugar, in direct contravention of the provisions of Sugar Order Number 6, providing for the process in awarding the volume of importation? On the issue of smuggling, the President said, bilang na ang mga araw na mga smugglers at hoarders na yan. Kilala na ba natin sila para makapag-umpisa na tayo sa pagbibilang ng araw? There is rampant agricultural smuggling into the Philippines, and there are reports of drug smuggling out of the Philippines. There are reports too of personalities involved in these smuggling activities being able to join the President on his foreign trips. So, just a word of advice and caution to the staff of the President, to the office of the President. Please exercise vigilance and impose the highest standards in qualifying personalities as part of the presidential delegation or of the people allowed to be seen and associated with the President. Sa larangan ng pabahay, ito ang sinabi ng Pangulo. Kung susumahin natin ito, mahigit 1 milyong kabahayan ang maialay natin sa ating mga kababayan sa buong bansa. I think the President is over-promising on the housing units that can be delivered in a year's time. I don't think it can be done. Those providing these housing units better be careful because we cannot rush these units, especially if their plan is to provide these housing units in high-rise structures. These structures need the proper time for curing, which cannot be rushed. My suggestion is not to go high-rise. House and lots are better than high-rise housing buildings. Past experience has shown this to us, and I am sure future experience will still confirm this. Executive action can make sure that there is transportation to and from these sites. We should start paying attention to the Housing Affordability Index in the Philippines. This measurement compares average housing prices with average salary. Makikita natin na hirap na ang mga kabataan ngayon na magkaroon at makabili ng kanilang sariling tahanan. When it comes to energy, I join the President in his efforts to increase our energy production and pursue total electrification. Indeed, renewable energy is the way forward. But all these efforts must have the consumer, the Filipino people, in mind. Masyado ng piga ang taong bayan. More than competitive pricing of electricity, what we need is a reasonable, affordable, and cheap price for electricity. Here in this land of ours, which is blessed with much sunshine and rain, surrounded by seas and dotted with wonderful volcanoes. I join the President in his commendation of the BARM and pledge my support too to the progress of the BARM. I support the President's effort to make the pension of the military and the uniformed personnel fully functional and financially sustainable. Given our one fund concept, the problem with the MUP pension system is the entire government's problem too. we shall try to make the transition as painless as possible. But should this turn out not to be totally possible, then we should all be ready to bear our share of the burden. The solidarity with our MUPs starts with a budget. We should discourage the bloating, eliminate the wasting, and stop the hemorrhaging of funds through our budget. I also support the President's call for the creation of the Department of Waters. I suggest that this agency be given jurisdiction over water resources and bodies of water from ridge to reef. The President mentioned the Samal Island Davao City Connector Bridge. May I just inform the President that the prospective beneficiaries of this bridge have serious objections about its alignment, which they claim will cause the irreversible and irreparable destruction of the Paradise Reef. The President mentioned the Maharlika Investment Fund, the MIF, but only in passing. It is good that the MIF was not touted to be his administration's greatest achievement in its first year, because achievement clearly it is not. What is sad is that to make 125 billion pesos earn, we have to spend first around 2.5 billion pesos. Another thing that is sad is that the first to get jobs out of this Maharlika Investment Fund will surely be the members of a group of internationally recognized economic managers, which the President mentioned. And most likely, these people would be foreigners. The Maharlika Investment Fund was not mentioned in the first Sona. This is the first time that it is mentioned in a Sona, and it is already a law, having overtaken the 20 priority legislative measures mentioned in the first Sona. The President should have explained to the Filipino people why he pushed for this measure, why he rushed this measure, when it is not necessarily needed. Hindi po ako makapaniwala na hindi ito makakadagdag sa ating utang. Congress gave the Maharlika Investment Corporation the power to incur more debt. Add to this the fact that the so-called investable funds from government banks, which make up its initial capital and funding, may also be deposit liabilities. Utang din yan. Up to this very moment, I am still questioning the wisdom, the need, and the propriety of even proposing this MIF. The procedure followed in approving the Maharlika Investment Fund Act is another matter which I believe will be questioned in court in due time. I just hope that the letters MIF will ultimately turn out to mean that this madness isn't forever. Just for the information of everyone, when the President mentioned his trips abroad, he said that these economic missions have yielded an estimated total investment value of 3.9 trillion pesos with a potential to generate 175,000 jobs. In contrast, when we were discussing the 125 billion pesos funding for the Maharlika, the claim was that this amount would generate 350,000 direct jobs. The President, who is a mathematician, knows his numbers better than some of his economic advisors. To help the President in his governance, I suggest the following ideas. For the President to already appoint a regular secretary of the Department of Agriculture. And as a mathematician myself, I appeal to the President to personally review the formulas our agencies use when they compute for the national demand for the various agricultural products. These are the formulas our agencies use to justify the importation of these commodities. There is something fishy in the formulas. The Department of Trade and Industry should come up with specific and detailed programs to guide and handhold our micro and small enterprises, as well as our creatives industry, on how they can take full advantage of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, the RCEP, and other trade agreements for them to access markets outside of the Philippines. We should also exert effort to genuinely guide those serious long-term foreign investors on how to deal with our, let me just call it, unique governmental system of permits and approvals. Some find our system too complicated. Some say corrupt. I say, let's make it navigable. Maybe a one-stop shop can do the trick. Di malasakit para sa mamumuhunan center, an extension of Senator Bongo's idea to the area of trade and investments. Tax reform must be pursued in both procedure and substance. But I wish we will push the envelope further. I believe it is about time to discuss or consider replacing the VAT system of taxation, which is complicated to administer and full of leakages, with a much simpler to administer and monitor goods and services tax, GST. Hindi ba natin napapansin na tuwing Sona, ang mga sektor na nababanggit parati ay ang mga magsasaka, mangingisda, manggagawa, mga mamimili, at ang mahihirap. Tapos, bilang na bilang lamang ang mga membro nila sa Kongreso. Kaya, panahon na mapabuti natin ang party list system natin. Let us reform the party list system law by allowing more representation, if not limiting the representation, to these truly marginalized sectors. Let us encourage the formation of more political parties for farmers, workers, workers' party, consumers, among others. The state of the nation is worrisome, nakakabagabag, nakakabahala. There is too much inequality in our land. Inequality can be measured by wealth inequality, income inequality, and even inequality in the benefits from GDP growth. It is about time that our economic managers also give us accurate reports on these matters. As of 2022, the Philippines ranked 15th out of 63 countries in terms of income inequality. The lower the number, the worse is the situation. In the report released by the World Bank, it was found that the Philippines has among the highest rates of income inequality in East Asia. The top 1% of Filipino earners get 17% of the national income, while the bottom 50% collectively share 14%. When it comes to poverty, a survey conducted by the social weather stations reveals that nearly half of Filipino families, 45%, or around 12.5 million households, consider themselves poor as of July 2023. Out of the 12.5 million who consider themselves poor, 2 million households are newly poor, meaning they were not poor a few years back. Meanwhile, another 33% rated themselves as borderline poor. 2,700,000 Filipinos experienced involuntary hunger. 2,300,000 experienced moderate hunger, while 340,000 faced severe hunger. In Mindanao, hunger is affecting more than 720,000 families. 95 Filipino children die from malnutrition every day. 28 out of 1,000 do not get past the age of 5 years old. 1 in every 3 Filipinos aged 5 and below suffer from stunting. The Philippines ranks 5th among countries in East Asia and Pacific region with the highest prevalence of stunting. Poor health, if it will not lead to early death, will lead to poor academic performance, impaired cognitive development, and will reinforce the poverty cycle. The increasing gap between the rich and the poor has given rise to profound inequalities in income, wealth, and benefits from economic growth. This disturbing trend necessitates urgent examination and action to ensure a more equitable and inclusive society for all. There were important subject matters left out of the President's Sona. Let me mention just some of them. There are 2 related areas where the President is given our Constitution great authority: national defense and international relations. Hence, it was disappointing not to hear from the President, Sona, his explanation or even point of view in the following subject matters. 1, the West Philippine Sea. 2, the EDCA sites. 3, the Afghan refugees. And 4, the U.S. military aircraft landing in our airports. I was hoping that the President, given that he has wide latitude in defense and foreign policy, would have explained why we needed to expand the EDCA sites of the U.S. military. Because there may be a neighboring country which looks at us and then says, you want to be a friend to all and an enemy to none, and yet you are participating in a containment policy of another power? We have heard some people describe the Philippines as an unsinkable aircraft carrier. We should not be happy about this. We should never subscribe to this image of the Philippines. The people who use these terms and mental images are not Filipinos. They are not from here. They live safely far away from our shores. The Philippines is our home. We live here. We have children here. We have daycare centers, schools, and playgrounds here. There are no elementary schools in aircraft carriers. We should think of the Philippines as the home of the Filipino people. We should not think and never think of the Philippines in military hardware terms. As a responsible member of the community of nations, we should do our part as a friendly people. Instead of hosting foreign military forces and bases, which could be interpreted by other nations as directed against them, why don't we instead host talks which improve the relations between and among nations? Host talks, not bases. Sana napaliwanag din ng Pangulo yung panukala na gawing host ang Pilipinas ng refugees at former U.S. employees and contractors from Afghanistan. Sa lawak ng lupain sa Amerika, bakit kailangan dito pa sa Pilipinas gagawin ang processing? Tapos ang ending nila ay sa US din naman pala. There was also nary a word about the report on increased sightings of US military aircrafts using our airports. Another curious omission is this administration's policy on POGOs. Why are POGO operations still being allowed to continue in spite of findings that the risks of allowing POGO operations outweigh the so-called benefits? Business groups have issued a manifesto to ban POGOs. The Department of Finance and NEDA have discussed the social cost of POGOs, that their continued operations in our country pose a reputational risk that could dissuade foreign firms from investing in the Philippines, discourage foreign tourists from visiting our shores, and result in severe economic consequences for our country. Crimes related to POGOs, kidnappings, tortures, illegal detention, cyber fraud, scams, tax evasions, and human trafficking, among many others, have been well documented and are increasing. Yet there has been no action, no change in policy. The Philippines is fast becoming another scam capital of the world, no thanks to these POGO operations. Our very hardworking colleague, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, has questioned why it took PAGCOR 4 years to investigate the crimes committed in a POGO hub in Pampanga. If PAGCOR were truly inspecting the POGO hubs twice a week, as they have claimed, how come they did not see the 1,100 victims of human trafficking in Sun Valley POGO hub alone? In another case, there were 1,534 Filipinos and over 1,000 foreign nationals rescued in a raid on an offshore gaming service provider in Las Piñas City. The President has been quoted as saying in one press briefing, and I quote him, "The problems in reference to POGOs come from the illegal ones, not the legal ones. But in the example that I have given involving the Sun Valley Business Hub in Mabalacat, Pampanga, it was a legal POGO which was involved. The CGC Technologies Incorporated, an accredited service provider operating under the offshore gaming licensee Oriental Game Limited." So why the inaction? Since the Philippines is fast becoming one of the scam capitals of the world, to combat this, I suggest that the government should institute kalaban ng pandaraya programs and beef up enforcement of our laws against fraud. In President Marcos's first Sona, he mentioned 19 or 20 pieces of legislation, of which none has been enacted into law. In the second Sona, the President enumerated 16 new pieces of legislation. The LEDAC lists 20 pieces of legislation. All the lists are different from each other. What are we supposed to make of these lists? There is no focus. We are jumping all over the place. The state of the nation is worrisome, nakakabagabag, nakakabahala. Konting ulan, baha. Mga bundok natin, kalbo. Reklamo sa korupsyon, kaliwat kanan. Power trippers at abusado, nagkalat. Hustisya, mabagal, at mailap. Mga bilihin, mahal. Sweldo, kulang. Ang piso, wala nang halaga. Pag ma-hospital ka, patay ka. Ang lipunan, hindi patas. Ang buhay, mahirap. We cannot afford to lose time and waste resources. Let us focus on what is truly important to the life of the Filipino. We need to get our acts together as problem solvers. Let us use our kokote for the common good. We need to act in good faith out of love for country. We need to want a just and fair, progressive and safe society. No amount of sloganeering, rebranding, and law governance can hide the true state of our nation. Ang kailangan natin ay formula for development tulad ng creativity, connectivity, community. Ang formula ay naaksyonan, ang slogan hindi. Hindi katumbas ng pagbabago ang pag-unlad. Ang slogan na Bagong Pilipinas ay hindi pa hahalagahan ng taong bayan hanggang sa makita at maramdaman nila na ang pagbabagong ito ay may kaakibat na pag-unlad sa pagtaas at pagbuti ng antas ng pamumuhay ng bawat pamilyang Pilipino. Ang Senate minority ay handang magsakripisyo at gampanan ang trabaho nila para sa isang makatarungan, patas at progresibong Republika ng Pilipinas. Sa dami ng mga problema at hamon na ating kinakaharap bilang isang bansa, kailangan magtulungan tayo. At sa tulong ng Diyos at ng buong sambayanang Pilipino, alam ko na tayo'y magtatagumpay. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Bunyog, bunyog, halikan na kasama ka. Bunyog, kapag buklod ay may pag-asa. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, isa ang pananaw. Sa bagong Pilipinas ang bunyog isisigaw. Bunyog.